Hey guys, in this video I will show you how to use Python to compare two Excel sheets and find their differences. Like in this example, we have a list of names and next to it the expected arrival date. Now at some point somebody might have updated this list and now you want to find out which cell has been changed. This is exactly what we are going to do in this video. Okay, and without further ado, let us get started. First things first, we need to install the required dependencies. To manipulate the Excel files, we will use pandas and xlwings. When working with Excel files, pandas also relies on the optional dependency 𝗚𝗢𝗦𝗧𝗜𝗢𝗡. You can install all modules by opening up your command prompt or terminal and running pip install followed by the package name. So pip install 𝗚𝗢𝗦𝗧𝗜𝗢𝗡, pandas and xlwings. With that in place, I will import pandas as pd and xlwings as xw. As we are also going to deal with different file paths, I will import path from pathlib. Pathlib is a core Python module, so no additional installation is required. With that out of the way, let us look at the first example. This example will be perfect for comparing two datasets with the same shape. By shape I mean the same amount of columns and rows. Like in my two Excel files. On the left side is the initial spreadsheet and next to it is the updated version. Only the values within each row might have been updated. However, no additional rows or entries have been added. So both files have 3 columns and 101 numbers of rows. I know this might not always be the case in a real life situation. So after this example, we will have a look at a more complicated spreadsheet. With that said, let us define the file paths to the Excel files. Both workbooks are located in the current working directory of this Jupyter notebook in a folder called same shape. To create the file paths, I'm using the pathlib module. Once we have the file paths defined, let us bring the Excel data into a pandas data frame. You can do this by typing pd.readExcel followed by the file path. And just to validate that it worked, I will also print out the first rows. After we have our two data frames, let us compare the data. To do so, we will use the pandas compare method. However, as mentioned already, this method can only compare identically labeled data frame objects. This means data frames with identical rows and column labels. So we can use the compare method in our example, and it is actually very straightforward. In my case, I will compare the updated data frame with the initial Excel file, and I want to highlight the differences on the columns. After running this cell, we will get back the following data frame. Pandas shows us now all the differences. For example, in the updated Excel file, the name Troy has been changed as well as some of the arrival dates. The compare method also takes in additional arguments, which I will show you in the following cells. For example, instead of aligning the differences on columns, we can also stack them on rows. In that case, you want to set align axis to 0. After running the cell, the output will look like this. Instead of only showing the differences, you could also keep the original numbers of rows and columns by setting keep shape to true. Pandas will now return the following data frame. NaN or NAT means that there is no difference. But at index position 99, the two data frames differ. And last but not least, you could also put the data side by side by setting both keep shape and keep equal to true. In this data frame, I think it's not very easy to spot the differences, but perhaps you need this kind of overview. You could also export the data frame by running the toExcel method followed by the output file name. In my case, I will save the first example where we have aligned the differences on columns. After executing this cell, we will have a new spreadsheet which looks like this. When I created this tutorial, I thought it might be also cool to take the updated Excel file, highlight the cells with a different background color, and even put a little comment in the cell that shows the old value. So that is why I also came up with a different solution. Instead of pandas, we will be using the xlwings library. Let me walk you through the code. I can use xlwings to create a new Excel instance, which I will call app. By setting visible to false, Excel will start in the background. I will open both workbooks within our Excel instance, so the initial version and the updated one. The data with the arrival dates is located in the first worksheet in both files. Okay, and here comes the trick. With xlwings, we can get back the used range of our worksheet. So this will return a range object with the range A1 to C101. Within that range, I can now iterate over each cell. So starting from cell A1. As the shape of both spreadsheets is the same, I can also get the old value from the initial workbook by using the current cell row and column number. For cell A1, this would translate to the first row in the first column. Now I can compare the existing value with the old one. If the values are not matching, we have identified a difference. In that case, I would like to add a comment to the cell. In the comment, I will write the name of the initial workbook and the previous cell value by using an f-string. But please note that adding comments is not yet fully implemented in xlwings, which means I'm using the underlying API here. This line of code should work fine on Windows, but I have not tested it on a Mac. If you're on a Mac and you're getting an error, you might want to comment out this line. With that said, let me also change the background color to a light red. We could now overwrite the updated version, but I will just save it as a new spreadsheet and call the file differencehighlighted.xlsx. After executing this cell, we will have our new workbook. All the differences are highlighted in red, and additionally we've got a comment with the previous value. Okay, now let us move on to a more complicated example. This time we want to compare two datasets with different numbers of rows. The spreadsheets are located in the folder Different Shape. Let me open the updated version to show you my modifications. On top of the previous changes, I have also inserted a new blank row and also a new entry with the arrival date of Peter Parker. We can also compare the shapes of both data frames to validate that they are indeed different. Therefore, we cannot use the pandas compare method. Instead, we will merge the data frames to show the differences. But before merging the datasets, let me reset the index from the updated data frame. This bit of information will be very important later. I will show you why in just a moment. So let us now merge the two data frames. If you have worked with SQL before, you might be familiar with the different merging methods. You could perform a left, right, outer or inner merge. I have created the following image to illustrate the different techniques. In our case, I want to perform an outer merge so that we can keep the rows of both data frames. The trick is to use the indicator argument. This new column will indicate whether the rows only exist in the right or left data frame, or if it exists in both datasets. If we only want to show the difference, we could now just filter out the entries which exist in both data frames. Now the remaining table will show us the difference. As an example, this entry does only exist in the initial data frame. In the updated version, Troy was written with an I. Even though we now know the difference, I think this table might not be handy, as we still need to check what has been changed manually. Therefore, I came up with a solution to highlight also our Excel rows. For this, we need to know the row number, which includes a difference. So let me query our data frame and only show the ones that exist in our updated version. Those are all the entries where we differ from the original Excel file. This data frame also contains the initial index. Let me convert this index column to a Python list. By default, pandas will convert the values to floats. However, I would like to get the integer values. We can do this by using a list comprehension. After executing this cell, we will get back the following list. However, this list does not yet represent the Excel row numbers. The pandas index starts from 0. And in the Excel sheet, our data, without the headers, starts from row number 2. So we need to add 2 to every value in our list. As before, I will use a list comprehension to do that. As a result, we will have a list with all the row numbers we want to highlight in Excel. And to highlight the rows, we will be using xlwings again. After initializing the Excel instance, I will open up the updated version. As before, I can get the used range from the first worksheet. This time the used range is from A1 to C103, as I have added 2 rows. We can now loop over every row in the used range. If the row number is in our list, I will apply a red background color to that row. And last but not least, I will save the workbook as a new file. After executing the cell, we can see the new workbook in our folder. And if we look at the file, we will notice that xlwings has highlighted every row that has been changed. Okay guys, and that is all for this tutorial. As always, thanks for watching and see you in the next video.